The alarm bells rang through the Zephyrian communications hub like screaming metal birds. Operator Vex 9 had been monitoring deep space frequencies for 12 cycles, without anything more exciting than merchant ship status reports. Now his 6 eyes stared at readings that made his scales turn pale blue with fear. The signal came from the edge of known space, where the peaceful Kepler collective grew food for half the galaxy. The transmission was breaking apart, filled with static and terror. Vex 9 turned up the volume and listened to words that would change everything. "This is Kepler Prime Emergency Command," a voice cracked through the speakers. "We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. The Vorthak Empire has entered our system with a massive fleet. They have already destroyed Kepler 4 and Kepler 7. Millions are dead. Our defense satellites lasted less than an hour against their weapons." The voice paused, filled with the sound of explosions in the background. "We are sending this message to all civilized worlds. The Vorthak are not here to conquer. They are consuming our planets, strip mining everything, taking our people as slaves. We estimate 6 days before they reach Kepler Prime. Please, if anyone can help us, we offer everything we have. Our entire food production, our technology, our loyalty. Just help us." The signal cut to static. Vex 9 stared at his equipment, his hands shaking. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Vorthak Empire. They were raiders from the dark regions beyond civilized space. Their ships were black metal nightmares that could crack planets open like eggs. Most governments had signed non-aggression pacts with them, hoping to avoid their attention. But the Kepler Collective was different. They were farmers and scientists, peaceful people who had never hurt anyone. They fed hungry worlds and asked for nothing but fair trade in return. The thought of the Vorthak destroying them made Vex 9 feel sick. He sent the message to every government frequency he could access. Then he waited. The responses came slowly, each one the same. Too far away. Too dangerous. Not our problem. The major powers of the galaxy turned their backs on the Kepler worlds like they were diseased animals. Light years away, on a blue and green world called Earth, Admiral Sarah Chen sat in her command center drinking coffee that would kill most aliens. The humans had been in space for only 200 years, but they had made quite an impression. Other species hired them when they needed soldiers who could survive anything and fight in places no sane being would go. Chen was reading reports when the Kepler message arrived. She listened to it 3 times, her face growing harder with each repetition. Around her, the command center buzzed with activity as her staff analyzed the tactical situation. "Admiral," said Commander Jackson, her intelligence officer, "we have detailed scans of the Vorthak fleet. 47 heavy cruisers over 200 smaller ships. They have plasma cannons that can melt through standard shields in seconds. Their armor is some kind of adaptive metal that gets stronger. Under fire." Chen nodded. "What about the Kepler defenses?" "Gone," Jackson replied grimly. "They had civilian-grade shields and light particle weapons. The Vorthak went through them like they were made of paper. The survivors are hiding in asteroid fields and hoping for rescue. Time frame? If the Vorthak maintain current speed, they reach Kepler Prime in 6 days, 14 hours. Chen stood up and walked to the tactical display. The Kepler system appeared as a 3-dimensional map of light and shadow. Red markers showed Vorthak positions. Blue markers showed the few remaining Kepler ships. It looked hopeless. "Admiral," said Captain Torres, commander of the flagship Prometheus. "The other governments have already refused to help. Even if we left right now, we would be outnumbered 50-1. Chen smiled and several of her officers stepped back. They knew that smile. It meant Admiral Chen had made a decision that would probably terrify their enemies and worry their friends. "Send a message to 3rd Expeditionary Fleet," she said. "Full deployment. We leave in 18 hours. The room went quiet. 3rd Expeditionary Fleet was humanity's most dangerous military unit. 12 ships that had fought in battles across the galaxy. Veterans who had survived conflicts that would have destroyed most species. They were killers and everyone knew it. "Ma'am," Jackson said carefully, "3rd Fleet has been in combat for 8 months straight. The crews need rest. The ships need repair time." "The crews will rest when the job is done," Chen cut him off. "And the ships will hold together because that's what human ships do. We're not leaving those people to die." She turned to face her staff. "I want complete intelligence packages on Vorthak tactics, weapons, and ship designs. I want our agents in the outer systems to start spreading rumors about a human fleet moving toward Kepler space. And I want psychological profiles on Vorthak. Leadership. If we're going to fight them, we need to understand how they think." Over the next 18 hours, Earth became a hive of activity. Supply ships rushed between orbital stations and the waiting warships. Marines loaded equipment that other species had banned from civilized warfare. Engineers made final adjustments to weapons systems that used principles most aliens found disturbing. The Third Expeditionary Fleet was not like other military forces. Human ships were built ugly and strong, designed to keep fighting even when they should have died. Human soldiers trained in environments that would cripple most species. They practiced tactics that civilized worlds called war crimes. Admiral Chen walked through the Prometheus before departure, checking on her crew. In the Marine quarters, Colonel Martinez was briefing his soldiers on Vortex ship layouts. In engineering, Chief Petty Officer Williams was explaining to her team how to keep the reactors running even if half the ship was blown away. In the HFY medical bay, Dr. Patel was organizing supplies for treating wounds that peaceful species had never imagined. Admiral, Torres said over the comm system, all ships report ready for departure. Chen made her way to the bridge. Through the main viewer, she could see the other 11 ships of Third Fleet. The destroyer Valkyrie, fast and deadly. The assault cruiser Mjolnir, built for close combat. The support vessel Nightingale, which carried enough firepower to level a city while pretending to be a hospital ship. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, she broadcast to the fleet. Today we received a distress call from innocent people who are about to die. Other governments have turned away because the odds are bad and the profit is small. But we are not other governments. We are humans. We go where others fear to walk. We fight battles others won't take. And we do not abandon people who need our help. She paused, looking at the stars ahead. The Vorthak Empire thinks they can consume entire worlds without consequences. They think civilized beings are too weak to stop them. They are about to learn what happens when they threaten someone under human protection. The fleet engaged their FTL drives. Reality twisted around them as they jumped into hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations. If Third Fleet failed, Fourth and Fifth Fleets were already being readied for deployment. But Admiral Chen did not plan to fail. The Vorthak had made a simple mistake. They had asked for a fight with Deathworlders, and Deathworlders never backed down from a challenge. The Third Expeditionary Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, like wolves entering a slaughterhouse. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the tactical display paint a picture of systematic destruction that made her jaw clench with rage. Kepler 4 was gone. Where a green world with 3 billion farmers had once spun peacefully around its star, only a ring of glowing debris remained. The Vorthak had cracked the planet open like a nut, sucking out the heavy metals from its core and leaving the pieces to drift in space. Kepler 7 was dying. Massive Vorthak harvester ships surrounded it like metal spiders, drilling deep shafts into the crust and pumping out everything valuable. From orbit, the planet looked like it had a disease, with black scars spreading across continents that had once grown food for a dozen systems. Jesus Christ, whispered Commander Jackson, staring at the sensor readings. They're not conquering these worlds. They're eating them. Chen nodded grimly. Captain Torres, what's our tactical situation? Torres highlighted enemy positions on the display. Red markers filled the system like an infection. 43 Vorthak heavy cruisers confirmed. Estimated 230 smaller vessels. They have their main fleet positioned around Kepler Prime, with harvesting groups working the outer planets. Survivors? We're detecting maybe 50 Kepler ships hiding in asteroid fields and gas giant rings. They're running dark, trying not to be seen. Most are civilian transports packed with refugees. Chen studied the display, her mind already working through possibilities that would have horrified most military commanders. Communications. Patch me through to any Kepler forces still active. The reply came quickly, desperate and grateful. Human fleet, this is Captain Zara Vel of the Kepler Defense Force. By the old gods, we thought everyone had abandoned us. Not everyone, Captain, Chen replied. We need tactical information on Vorthak capabilities and defensive positions. Admiral, with respect, you have 12 ships, they have hundreds. Their weapons can punch through our strongest shields like they're made of light. Their armor adapts to whatever hits it, getting stronger with each shot. How can you possibly... Captain... Vel, Chen interrupted. Has your people ever fought an enemy that evolved on a death world? There was a long pause. No, Admiral. We don't understand. You will. Send us everything you have on Vorthak ship designs, tactical doctrine, and command structure. And Captain, start spreading word to your survivors that help has arrived. Tell them to stay hidden for now, but be ready to move when we give the signal. Chen cut the connection and turned to her staff. Analysis. Commander Jackson pulled up detailed scans of Vorthak vessels. Their technology is impressive but predictable. Heavy armor, massive energy weapons, overlapping shield grids. They fight like they expect enemies to stand still and trade shots. Weaknesses? They seem to have trouble with rapid course changes. Their ships are built for straight-line attacks, not maneuvering. And Admiral, Jackson paused. They're operating in formations that assume no one will try boarding actions. Chen Oi smiled that terrible smile again. They're about to get an education. Captain Torres, signal the fleet. We're going to teach the Vorthak what happens when they pick a fight with humans. Across the system, Vorthak Fleet Commander Krex studied reports from his sensor operators with growing annoyance. A small alien fleet had appeared at the system's edge, broadcasting primitive radio signals and moving at speeds that suggested chemical rocket propulsion. Pathetic. Commander, reported his tactical officer, the new arrivals appear to be from a species called humans. Our databases show they are recent arrivals to galactic civilization, primitive technology, water-based biology, originated from a high-gravity world with excessive radiation. Krex clicked his mandibles dismissively. Scavengers. They probably heard about our operation and hoped to salvage something from the wreckage. Send Squadron 7 to deal with them. I want them destroyed or driven off before they interfere with the harvest. The tactical officer hesitated. Commander, the human ships are approaching the asteroid belt where some Kepler survivors are hiding. Should Squadron 7 pursue them there? Of course. Drive them out and finish off any survivors while you're at it. What Commander Krex didn't understand was that humans didn't think like other species. Where the Vorthak saw dangerous asteroids that could damage their ships, humans saw cover, weapons, and opportunities. Where other species saw radiation fields as hazardous zones to avoid, humans saw places where they could operate freely, while their enemies died slowly. Captain Morrison of the destroyer Valkyrie received Admiral Chen's orders with the kind of grin that made alien diplomats nervous. His ship was designed for exactly this kind of fight. Fast, tough, and armed with weapons that other species considered unsporting. Helm, take us into the asteroid belt, Morrison ordered. Engineering, I want all passive sensors online. Weapons, load the special ammunition. The Vorthak Squadron. 7 followed them into the belt like predators chasing wounded prey. 7 ships against 1 seemed like easy odds. They spread out in a standard hunting formation, energy weapons charging for what should have been a simple execution. Then the asteroid started exploding. Morrison had spent the approach time seeding the belt with remote mines, turning chunks of rock into guided missiles. The Vorthak ships found themselves surrounded by flying debris that hit like artillery shells. Their adaptive armor could handle energy weapons, but 1,000-ton rocks moving at orbital velocity were a different problem. The Vorthak squadron leader tried to back out of the belt, only to discover that the human ship had somehow gotten behind him. The Valkyrie emerged from the shadow of a major asteroid, moving at a speed that should have been impossible for such a heavily built vessel. All weapons. Fire. Morrison ordered calmly. The Valkyrie's main guns spoke with the voice of controlled, nuclear explosions. But these weren't the energy weapons the Vorthak expected. These were kinetic rounds, solid slugs of depleted uranium moving at significant fractions of light speed. The Vorthak armor, designed to adapt to plasma and laser fire, had no defense against simple mass moving very fast. The first Vorthak ship died instantly, as a tungsten rod punched through its hull from nose to tail. The second managed to get its shields up, only to discover that human kinetic weapons didn't care about energy barriers. The third ship tried to retreat and ran into more remote mines. Within 10 minutes, Squadron 7 was debris floating in space. Captain Morrison broadcast the results to the fleet on a frequency he knew the Vorthak were monitoring. Admiral, this is Valkyrie. Squadron 7 is neutralized. Beginning recovery operations on survivors. Across the system, Vorthak communications channels erupted in confusion. 7 ships destroyed by 1? It was impossible. There had to be a mistake. But Admiral Chen was just getting started. Her fleet split up and disappeared into the system's chaos like sharks scattering through bloody water. The Vorthak had spread out to harvest multiple worlds, thinking their numbers guaranteed safety. They were about to learn why apex predators hunted in packs. The heavy cruiser Mjolnir appeared near Kepler 7, broadcasting standard diplomatic codes and requesting permission to approach the harvesting fleet. The Vorthak commander, still confused by the reports from Squadron 7, agreed to meet these strange aliens. Colonel Martinez and his marine assault team were already suited up and ready. When the Vorthak ship extended docking clamps for a formal meeting, they got a very different kind of visitor. Human Marines had trained for boarding actions in zero gravity, high radiation, and hostile atmosphere. They moved through alien ship, corridors like water flowing downhill, adapting to layouts they had never seen before. The Vorthak crew, evolved on a low-gravity world with minimal predation, had never faced anything like humans in close combat. The fight lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, 3 Vorthak harvester ships were under human control, their databases downloaded and their crews either dead or wishing they were. But the real psychological impact came from what the humans did next. Instead of simply destroying the captured ships, they broadcast detailed recordings of the boarding action on all Vorthak frequencies. Every Vorthak commander in the system watched humans hunt through their ships like demons, never missing, never hesitating, never showing mercy. Commander Krex realized he had made a terrible mistake. These weren't scavengers or primitive aliens looking for salvage. These were killers who thought ship-to-ship boarding actions were routine operations. The orderly harvest was becoming a nightmare, and the humans were just getting started. Admiral Chen stood in the captured Vorthak command center, studying data that would have taken months to gather through normal intelligence operations. The alien computers were different from human systems, but her technical teams had cracked their security in less than 6 hours. Sometimes having a species that treated problem-solving as a survival skill paid unexpected dividends. "Admiral," Commander Jackson reported, "we have complete tactical databases from 3 harvester ships, fleet positions, command codes, supply schedules, even personal files on their senior officers." Chen nodded, scrolling through information that painted a picture of an enemy that was dangerous but predictable. The Vorthak were used to overwhelming force and intimidation. They expected their enemies to fight according to civilized rules of warfare. They had never encountered a species that treated those rules as suggestions. "What about their command structure?" she asked. "Highly centralized. Everything flows through Fleet Commander Krex on the flagship World Eater. If we can disrupt their communications, the smaller units will be operating blind." "And psychologically?" Jackson paused, choosing his words carefully. "They're starting to panic. We monitored their communications after the boarding actions. They're calling us nightmare beings and ship demons. Several captains have requested permission to retreat." Chen smiled. Fear was a weapon, and humans had been using it longer than most species had been in space. "Show me their main fleet deployment." The tactical display shifted to show Kepler Prime, surrounded by a wall of Vorthak ships. 40 heavy cruisers in perfect formation, overlapping, shields creating an impenetrable barrier. It was exactly the kind of defensive position that had crushed every enemy they had faced. "Classic Vorthak hammer formation," Torres observed. "They expect us to attack head-on and get crushed against their firepower." "Then we won't attack head-on," Chen replied. "Commander Jackson, I want you to start broadcasting on all Vorthak frequencies. Use their own communication codes." "What should the message say, Admiral?" Chen's expression grew cold. "Tell them exactly what we're going to do to them." Across the Vorthak fleet, communication officers received transmissions that made their skin crawl. The messages came on their own secure channels, using codes that should have been impossible for outsiders to break. The voice was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying. "Vorthak forces, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. You have committed acts of genocide against the innocent worlds of the Kepler Collective. You have murdered billions of civilians and destroyed peaceful civilizations. By the laws of civilized warfare, you are no longer soldiers. You are criminals who have forfeited any right to mercy." The message continued with clinical precision. "We are going to hunt down every ship in your fleet. We are going to board your vessels and eliminate your crews. We are going to track your species back to its homeworld and ensure that you never threaten innocent people again. This is not a negotiation. This is a notification." But the worst part came at the end. "For those who wish to understand what you are facing, we have uploaded files to your tactical networks. These contain detailed records of species that previously challenged humanity and lost. The Centauri hegemony, the Rigel Confederacy, the Proxima corporate state. Study them carefully. Note how none of them exist anymore." Fleet Commander Krex stared at his communication screens in disbelief. How had aliens he had never heard of penetrated his security systems? How did they know about fleet positions that were classified at the highest levels? His tactical officer was reviewing the files the humans had uploaded. "Commander," the officer said in a shaking voice, "these records are real. The Centauri hegemony had a fleet 3 times larger than ours. The humans destroyed them in 6 months." That's impossible, Krex snapped. Centauri had plasma weapons that could sterilize planets. The humans didn't fight them in space, sir. They infiltrated Centauri supply networks, poisoned their food production, and caused civil wars on their core worlds. By the time the Centauri fleet realized what was happening, their civilization had already collapsed. Krex felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. Genuine fear. These humans weren't just another military force. They were something that planned the complete destruction of their enemies and had the patience to make it happen. His fears proved justified when the attacks began in earnest. Captain Williams of the support vessel Nightingale approached a Vorthak patrol group broadcasting medical assistance codes. The Nightingale looked harmless, painted white with red medical symbols, transmitting on frequencies reserved for hospital ships. The Vorthak patrol leader, Commander Yax, was suspicious but desperate. His ships had taken damage from human surprise attacks, and his crew needed medical attention that his own doctors couldn't provide. Against his better judgment, he agreed to allow the human medical ship to dock. The first hint that something was wrong came when human medics boarded his ship wearing full combat armor. The second hint came when they started treating his wounded, with drugs that seemed to work too well. His injured crew members weren't just recovering, they were falling unconscious. By the time Yax realized the medical ship was actually a Trojan horse, human Marines were already moving through his vessel. But this wasn't like the brutal boarding actions they had seen before. These humans moved with surgical precision, using non-lethal weapons that dropped Vorthak crew members without killing them. Within an hour, 3 patrol ships were under human control, their crews unconscious but alive. The humans uploaded the ship's databases, downloaded their communication protocols, and then did something that shocked the Vorthak fleet. They let the crews go. Commander Yax found himself and his people aboard escape pods floating in space and broadcasting distress calls. When Vorthak rescue ships arrived, they found crews who were physically unharmed but psychologically shattered. They could have killed us all, Yax reported to Fleet Command. Their weapons, their technology, their tactics. They could have slaughtered us like animals, but they didn't. They wanted us alive to tell you what happened. The message was clear. The humans could have been merciless, but they chose to be precise. They were demonstrating control, showing that they could kill or spare as they chose. It was psychological warfare at its most sophisticated. Meanwhile, other human ships were conducting operations that defied everything the Vorthak understood about space combat. The destroyer Valkyrie was operating inside the radiation field of a damaged stellar collector, using the massive energy output as both concealment and a weapon. The cruiser Mjolnir was conducting hit-and-run attacks from inside asteroid fields, turning space debris into guided missiles. Most disturbing of all, human ships seemed to be everywhere at once. Vorthak sensors would track a human vessel in one sector, only to have the same ship attack them from a completely different direction minutes later. It was as if the humans could teleport or bend space itself. The truth was simpler and more terrifying. Human ships were designed to operate in environments that would kill most species. They could dive deeper into gravity wells, withstand higher radiation levels, and maneuver in situations where other vessels would be destroyed. The humans weren't violating the laws of physics, they were using physics as a weapon. Admiral Chen monitored the chaos from the Prometheus, watching her fleet conduct a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. Each engagement was different, each attack perfectly tailored to exploit specific Vorthak weaknesses. Her crews were using every advantage their Deathworld evolution had provided. Admiral, Torres reported, we're receiving surrender offers from 6 Vorthak squadrons. They want to negotiate. Denied, Chen replied without hesitation. They had their chance to negotiate before they started murdering civilians. Now they get to learn what happens to species that commit genocide. The Vorthak fleet was discovering that they hadn't just encountered another military force. They had challenged a species that treated warfare as an art form and had been perfecting it for thousands of years. Every human tactic, from the boarding actions to the psychological warfare, was designed not just to win battles but to completely break their enemy's will to fight. Commander Krex stared at reports that made no sense. His powerful fleet was being carved apart by an enemy that shouldn't have been able to threaten a single one of his ships. His communications were compromised, his supply lines were under attack, and his crew was starting to panic. But the humans weren't finished yet. The real demonstration of their capabilities was still to come. Fleet Commander Krex had ruled through fear for 30 years, watching entire civilizations surrender rather than face the Vorthak war machine. Now he sat in his command center aboard the flagship World Eater, surrounded by reports that turned his understanding of warfare upside down. Half his fleet was gone, not destroyed in glorious battle, but picked apart piece by an enemy that fought like nothing he had ever encountered. "Commander," his communication officer reported, "we have another human broadcast incoming on our secure channels." Krex's mandibles clicked in frustration. The humans had been broadcasting on supposedly secure Vorthak frequencies for hours, somehow using codes that changed faster than his technicians could track. "Put it through." Admiral Chen's voice filled the command center, calm and professional as if she were discussing the weather. "Commander Krex, this is Admiral Chen. By now you have realized that your conventional tactics are useless against human forces. Your ships are designed for battles that we will never fight. Your weapons are optimized for enemies that we will never be." Krex wanted to cut the transmission, but something in the human's tone made him listen. This wasn't the usual pre-battle bragging that he expected from inferior species. "Your databases contain detailed records of 47 civilizations that the Vorthak Empire has destroyed," Chen continued. "Billions of innocent people murdered for their resources. Children killed for the crime of being born on worlds you wanted to harvest. You have styled yourselves as apex predators, but you have only hunted prey that couldn't fight back." The Admiral paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the cold promise of absolute destruction. "Today you meet a species that evolved as actual apex predators. We are what happens when prey learns to hunt its hunters. Commander Krex, you are about to receive a personal education in what that means." The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak command center in stunned silence. Before anyone could speak, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Commander," the sensor officer shouted, "multiple human contacts directly off our bow. How did they get through our perimeter?" On the main display, 4 small craft appeared, as if materializing from empty space. They were moving fast, too fast for the World Eater's main guns to track. Krex realized with growing horror that these weren't ships, they were human boarding pods. "All defensive batteries fire," he ordered. But it was too late. The human boarding pods didn't dock with the World Eater. They punched through its hull like bullets through tissue paper, using directed explosives to blast entry points in the ship's armor. The Vorthak had never designed their ships to resist internal invasion because no sane species attempted boarding actions against vessels this size. Humans, as Krex was learning, were not sane by galactic standards. Colonel Martinez led the assault team through the World Eater's corridors with the efficiency of a surgical instrument. His Marines moved in perfect coordination, using tactics that had been developed fighting in the twisted metal mazes of derelict space stations and the cramped tunnels of asteroid mining colonies. The Vorthak crew tried to resist, but their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not close quarters fighting in their own corridors. Human small arms, built for creatures that had spent millennia hunting each other, were devastatingly effective in confined spaces. "Sector 7 secured," Martinez reported over the comm. "Proceeding to engineering." "Copy that, Colonel," came the reply from Lieutenant Chen, the Admiral's niece, who was leading a second team toward the bridge. "Sector 4 is ours. These corridors are too narrow for their heavy weapons." The Vorthak had built their ships for their own physiology. Tall, slender creatures who moved gracefully in low gravity. The corridors that felt spacious to them became deadly choke points when humans started moving through them. Every corner became a trap, every junction a kill zone. Commander Krex watched his ship's internal sensors show human teams spreading through the World Eater like a virus. They moved with purpose, clearly working from detailed blueprints of Vorthak ship design. How was that possible? "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the humans aren't trying to capture the ship. They're placing some kind of devices throughout the hull." Krex felt his blood turn cold. "Explosives?" "Unknown, sir. The devices are too small to be conventional bombs." 20 minutes after the boarding began, the human teams withdrew as suddenly as they had arrived. Their boarding pods punched back through the hull, leaving behind a ship that seemed undamaged but somehow felt infected. "Commander," the communication officer announced, "incoming transmission from Admiral Chen." This time the human admiral appeared on screen, and Krex got his first look at his enemy. She was smaller than he had expected, built compact and solid like all Deathworld species. Her face showed no emotion, but her eyes held the kind of cold intelligence that had once stared down saber-toothed predators and decided to make them extinct. "Commander Krex," Chen said, "my teams have just finished installing monitoring devices throughout your flagship. We can now hear every conversation, read every computer file, and track every order you give. Your ship has become our eyes and ears inside your own fleet. Krex started to respond, but Chen continued as if he hadn't spoken. More importantly, those devices contain a complete record of human capabilities, tactics, and strategic doctrine. We are not hiding our methods from you, Commander. We want you to understand exactly what you are facing. The display behind Chen showed detailed schematics of human weapons, ship designs, and battle tactics. Information that should have been classified at the highest levels was being handed over freely. Why? Krex demanded. Why give us your tactical secrets? Chen smiled, and Krex understood why other species called humans nightmare beings. Because it won't matter, Commander. Your people have been fighting civilized wars against civilized enemies. You expect battles between matched fleets in open space with rules of engagement and codes of honor. We fight extinction wars against anything that threatens our survival. She gestured to the schematics. Study our weapons, learn our tactics. Share them with your entire fleet if you want. It will not save you because our greatest advantage isn't our technology. Our greatest advantage is that we think differently than any species you have encountered. The transmission cut to display after display of previous human conflicts. The destruction of the Centauri hegemony, where humans had infiltrated their society for decades before striking. The collapse of the Rigel Confederacy, whose mighty fleet had been neutralized by human agents who turned their own weapons against them. Each of these enemies studied us. Chen's voice continued over the images. Each of them knew our capabilities and tried to counter them. Each of them failed because they couldn't think like Deathworld predators. They expected us to fight their kind of war. The final image showed Earth from space, blue and green and beautiful. We are a species that survived ice ages, supervolcano eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless extinction events. We learned to cooperate not because we were peaceful, but because it was the only way to kill our enemies efficiently. We developed tools not to build but to hunt creatures larger and stronger than ourselves. The display returned to Admiral Chen's face. You want to know what makes humans dangerous, Commander? It's not our weapons or our ships. It's that when we decide something needs to die, we commit our entire species to making it happen. And Commander Krex, you have convinced us that the Vorthak Empire needs to die. Across the Vorthak fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Human teams had somehow infiltrated dozens of ships simultaneously, installing monitoring devices and downloading intelligence data. It was a demonstration of capability that left the surviving Vorthak commanders in shocked silence. Sir, Krex's tactical officer reported, we're receiving signals from the outer system, multiple FTL signatures dropping out of hyperspace. Reinforcements? Krex asked hopefully. Negative, sir. The signatures are massive, much larger than anything in our databases. Admiral Chen's voice came over the speakers one final time. Those are 4th and 5th Human Expeditionary Fleets, Commander. 67 additional ships, carrying enough firepower to sterilize every Vorthak world simultaneously. We called them as insurance in case 3rd Fleet encountered unexpected difficulties. Krex stared at the tactical display showing the new arrivals. Each human ship was smaller than his heavy cruisers, but he was beginning to understand that size meant nothing when fighting an enemy that used physics itself as a weapon. You have until dawn on Kepler Prime to surrender unconditionally, Chen announced. After that, we stop taking prisoners and start making examples. Choose wisely, Commander. It's the last choice your species will make as a free people. The communication ended, leaving Krex alone with the realization that his mighty empire had challenged a species that planned war the way other civilizations planned agriculture. Long-term, thorough, and with absolute commitment to the final result. The Vorthak Empire had just discovered what it meant to be prey. Fleet Commander Krex sat in his command center watching his empire die in real time. The monitoring devices the humans had planted throughout his fleet were broadcasting everything: ship positions, ammunition levels, crew morale reports, even personal communications between officers. His own tactical network had become humanity's intelligence source. Commander, his communication officer reported with a trembling voice. We have simultaneous explosions reported across the Vorthak industrial complex, our shipyards at Vorthak Prime, our weapon factories on Vorthak 7, our training facilities on Vorthak 12. They're all gone. Krex stared at the reports flooding in from across Vorthak space. Decades of industrial development, wiped out and coordinated, strikes that happened at exactly the same moment. The timing was impossible unless... How long have they been planning this? He whispered. His intelligence officer, Commander Thex, had been reviewing human tactical files for hours. Her analysis made Krex's worst fears seem optimistic. Sir, based on the coordination required, They must have been positioning agents throughout our territory for months, possibly years. The humans weren't responding to our attack on Kepler. They were waiting for it. The implications hit Krex like a physical blow. Every move his fleet had made, every tactical decision, every target they had chosen, it had all been anticipated and planned for. The Vorthak Empire hadn't stumbled into a fight with humans. They had walked into a trap that had been years in the making. "Sir," the tactical officer announced. "Incoming priority transmission from Vorthak High Command." The display flickered to show Chancellor Vex, the supreme ruler of the Vorthak Empire, surrounded by the burning remains of what had once been the most powerful government complex in known space. His scales were blackened with soot, his ceremonial robes torn and bloody. "Krex," the Chancellor gasped. "What have you done? Our entire civilization is under attack. Every military base, every factory, every government building. They're destroying everything simultaneously." "Chancellor," Krex replied numbly. "We attacked a small farming collective. How could this trigger a response of this magnitude?" "Because," came a new voice, "you committed genocide against innocent people under our protection." Admiral Chen appeared on the display beside the Chancellor, calm and composed while everything around them burned. Behind her, human Marines were systematically working through Vorthak government computers, downloading files and arresting officials. "Chancellor Vex," Chen said formally, "you are under arrest for crimes against sentient life. Your empire's systematic murder of civilian populations across 17 star systems constitutes the largest act of genocide in recorded galactic history." The Chancellor tried to speak, but Chen continued. "The Vorthak Empire is hereby dissolved. Your military forces will surrender immediately. Your surviving population will be relocated to agricultural worlds under human supervision. Your weapons of mass destruction will be destroyed. Your war criminals will face trial." "You can't simply eliminate an entire interstellar government," Vex protested. "The Galactic Council will never recognize such an action." Chen's smile was colder than deep space. "Chancellor, we have spent the past 6 months documenting every atrocity your empire has committed. We have testimony from survivors, recordings of your military orders, and evidence of systematic extermination campaigns. When we present this to the Galactic Council, they will not only recognize our actions, they will thank us for them." She gestured, and human soldiers escorted the Chancellor away. Chen turned back to the display, addressing Krex directly. "Commander, you have 30 minutes to order a complete surrender of all Vorthak forces. Any ship that does not immediately power down weapons and submit to boarding will be destroyed. Any world that resists occupation will be quarantined until its population agrees to human oversight. This is not a negotiation." "And if I refuse?" Krex asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then we proceed with final protocol," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "Complete sterilization of all Vorthak military assets and the permanent occupation of your homeworld. Your species will survive, but only as farmers growing food for the civilizations you tried to murder." Krex looked around his command center, at officers who had once struck fear into the hearts of entire star systems. Now they watched their commander with desperate hope, praying that he would make the choice that would save what little remained of their empire. "Admiral Chen," Krex said slowly, "if we surrender, what happens to my crew? To our families? Your military personnel will be processed through rehabilitation programs designed to reintegrate former soldiers into civilian life. Your families will be relocated to suitable worlds where they can live peacefully under human protection. Your children will be educated in schools that teach cooperation instead of conquest. And our culture, our history," Chen paused, and for the first time Krex saw something like sympathy in her expression. "Your culture produced genocide, Commander. Your history is built on the bones of innocent people. We will preserve what is worth preserving and eliminate what is dangerous. Your people will learn to live without violence, or they will live under supervision until they do." Krex closed his eyes, thinking of the proud warriors who had served under his command, the vast fleets that had once ruled this sector of space, the fear and respect that the Vorthak name had commanded. All of it was ending because they had made the mistake of murdering people under human protection. "All Vorthak forces," he broadcast on the Fleet Command frequency. "This is Fleet Commander Krex. Effective immediately, all ships will power down weapons and submit to human boarding parties. Any resistance to these orders will be treated as mutiny. The war is over. We have lost." Across the system, Vorthak ships began shutting down their weapon systems and extending docking ports for human inspection teams. Some tried to run, only to discover that human ships were faster and their crews more experienced at pursuit. A few attempted final desperate attacks and were destroyed with clinical efficiency. Within 6 hours, the entire Vorthak fleet was under human control. Within 12 hours, human forces had occupied every major Vorthak military installation in 3 star systems. Within 24 hours, the Vorthak Empire simply ceased to exist as a political entity. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching refugee ships from the Kepler Collective begin emerging from their hiding places. The agricultural worlds that the Vorthak had tried to destroy were already organizing rescue operations for their scattered populations. "Admiral," Captain Torres reported, "we're receiving thanks from survivors across the system." Captain Zara, "Vel of the Kepler Defense Force is requesting permission to come aboard and thank you personally." Chen nodded. "Grant permission. And Torres, send a message to Earth Command. Mission accomplished. The Kepler Collective is secure, and the Vorthak Empire is no longer a threat to galactic stability." "Yes, ma'am. And the prisoners?" "Standard. Protocols. Rehabilitation for those who can be saved. Permanent supervision for those who can't. We're not monsters, Captain. We don't commit genocide even against genocidal species." Later, as Chen reviewed reports of the operation's success, she reflected on how the galaxy was about to change. News of humanity's intervention in the Kepler system was already spreading to other star systems. Species that had never heard of Earth were suddenly very interested in learning about humans. Some would offer trade agreements and military alliances, hoping to gain human protection. Others would attempt to negotiate non-aggression pacts, terrified of becoming humanity's next target. A few would make threats they weren't prepared to back up and learn very quickly why that was a mistake. The communication console chimed with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. Chancellor Mora, an elderly diplomat from the peaceful Centaurian Republic, appeared on screen looking simultaneously grateful and terrified. "Admiral Chen," Mora began carefully, "the Galactic Council has reviewed preliminary reports of your intervention in the Kepler system. We wish to formally thank humanity for eliminating the Vorthak threat to galactic peace." "You're welcome, Chancellor," Chen replied neutrally. "However," Mora continued nervously, "the Council is concerned about the thoroughness of your response. The complete elimination of an interstellar government in less than 24 hours is unprecedented. Some member species are worried about humanity's future intentions." Chen's expression didn't change, but her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had just reshaped galactic politics through pure force of will. "Chancellor, humanity has no interest in conquest or domination. We are perfectly content to trade peacefully and mind our own business. But we will not tolerate genocide, and we will not abandon people who call for our help." She leaned forward slightly. "The Vorthak Empire chose to commit atrocities against innocent civilians. They chose to ignore diplomatic solutions. They chose to fight a war they couldn't win. We simply gave them what they asked for." "And in the future?" Mora asked. "In the future, species that live peacefully will find humans to be valuable friends and allies. Species that commit acts of genocide will discover what happened to the Vorthak Empire. The choice, as always, is theirs to make."